Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai Royal Echsar. V'nesteshi Yarbitzeini Amei Menukas Yin Ha'aleini. Psalm of David, God is my shepherd, I shall not lack. In lush meadows he lays me down, beside tranquil waters he leads me. Nafshi Eshoveh, Yancheni B'maglei Tzedek L'ma'an Shemoi, Gam Ki Elech B'geit Salmovas Lo'ir Ra, Ki Ato Imodi. In lush meadows he lays me down, beside tranquil waters he leads me. He restores my soul, leads me on path of justice for his name's sake. Though I walk in the valley overshadowed by death, I fear no evil, because I know you are with me. Your staff and your rod together both serve to comfort me. Tarach lefonei shulchan neged soroi, dishanta b'shem and roshi kosi v'voya. Prepare a table before me in full view of my tormentors. You anointed my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Achto v'chesed yudefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti b'veis Adonai l'orech yamim. May only good and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, that I be able to dwell in the house of the Lord for an eternity of days. We gathered here to take final leave with David Rothenberg, David ben Yechiel Halevi. The opportunity of knowing the Rothenbergs and part of many of the Rothenberg family occasions for quite a few years. So it's something which is something you feel a little bit more, take it to heart a lot more. And you have somebody that you know quite well, an opportunity of visiting the Rothenbergs quite a bit over the past several years until the most recent, until the virus didn't allow us to be able to stop by. Because the Jewish holiday of Sukkot right now, the eulogy itself is generally kept to a minimum. Not so much because out of a lack of respect for the deceased, for David, but because of the period of joy in general, the communal joy. It would be inappropriate to be able to focus on the personal grief and suffering. I found it strange, though. I found it just ironic. The first thing that came to mind when I thought about David is just, and again, obviously, he lived at quite a ripe old age, 99 years old. Didn't have the chance to know him the majority of those years, of course. But the part of what stuck out about him was always that sense of humor, that sense of joy. It's sense of being able to come into the room to see him. To be able to always have such a sense of pleasantness, such a sense of a smile. I knew that sense. I knew he had been somewhat of a comedian of sorts, actually. Spoken and actually given presentations, actually. I've never heard him personally. To try to get something out of him, but he really wasn't too successful. But nevertheless, though, that struck me that during the holiday of Sukkot, which is called Zman Simchaseinu, the holiday of joy, the holiday which is meant for the Jewish people to be able to bring a certain sense of a smile to our faces, that sense of joy, that sense of appreciation. How appropriate it is that he takes leave of this world to spending a life of bringing smiles and joy to other people at a time which is meant specifically to be able to bring joy to the Jewish people. Holiday of Sukkot is called Chag Asif, the holiday of the ingathering of the crops. Take the work of the entire season, all the hard work that was put into everything, and to be able to bring it in, that ingathering. Person's life struck me as person's life is like that also. Put a tremendous amount of work and effort into a whole life of accomplishment. And then at the end, being able to bring it all together. The terminology used in the Torah, as a matter of fact, of a person leaving this world is Vayesechel Amov, he's gathered to his people. so to say. That sense of ingathering also. I felt it was quite appropriate, although perhaps it couldn't be, I can't be perhaps too elaborate insofar as the eulogy of the accomplishments and of his involvement over the course of his life, and hear a little bit from his sons. But nevertheless, though, it felt there was certain that sense of joy, that sense of pleasure, that sense of kindness, pleasantness. There's something that I think we all, everybody that knew him, that knew David, I think that appreciates that and understands that also. That marriage with Mr. and Mrs. Rothenberg was something so beautiful to see. That same sense of pleasantness, that same sense of joy also, just again seeing them together when we would visit them, and seeing the family simchas at their grandchildren's weddings that we took part in. That sense, there was such a beautiful sight to be able to see a couple living so many years together, thank God, in the sense of peace and calm and joy. The soul should be bound in the eternal bond of life. The Almighty bring a sense of comfort. His wife, his sons, Ralph and David and their families, his grandchildren and great-grandchildren also. Many memories to be able to hold on to. That gathering of a course of a lifetime. Many things to be able to take, to be able to use those as a source of inspiration, of growth as you continue on yourself also. I'd like to ask your son, Dr. Ralph, to be able to say a few words. Followed by Son Ray.
My father never really taught me or instructed me how to live. He taught by example. When he retired, I thought he was crazy. He had nothing else that I knew about except his work and his family. And yet, he reinvented his life. He followed the history of the Cleveland Jews. He went to the library, wrote up a dissertation on it. And then, when he was done with that, he reinvented his life again. He pulled out his old clarinet, started playing it, played chamber music with a group, and did that for a while. And when he went to Myers, he organized comedian groups and other activities on the weekends when he was scheduled to do so, and became a comedian again. So he taught me how to reinvent life by example. Life didn't end, and it continues. And I thank him for his examples. Thank you.
My father wrote an autobiography. He started on it many years ago, and he continued with the writing of it. So I'd like to let him speak for himself with some things that I extracted from his autobiography. He started with a preface, and in the preface, I should first say he's the youngest of 4 children. His brother, oldest brother Morris, who my father said was his role model. He had brother Benny, who he had a particular stick with also, and his sister Faye. He said in the preface to his autobiography, "I dedicate this story to the memory of my sister Faye, whose guidance, devotion, patience, and understanding molded my character. She instilled in me my sense of humor, which I consider my outstanding characteristic." Further into his autobiography, he talked about when he met my mother, which was on a blind date. And he said she lived with her parents in an apartment, and she opened the door and looked at him and said, "Don't I know you?" Well, they had been on a double date with different partners previously. And my father wrote, "In a very short time, I learned that Natalie was the most considerate, unassuming, thoughtful, agreeable, kind-hearted person that I had ever known. 6 months later, we were married." this will duplicate part of what Ralph said, but it's right there in his autobiography. My father said, "I always said I'll never retire. I'll work until I drop dead on the job." However, after 38 years working as an electrician, the picture changed. I was ready for retirement, although I was apprehensive about not being able to adjust. I was determined that I wouldn't sit around watching TV. So I made a project for myself. I went to the Western Reserve Historical Society Museum and started to research on the Jewish community that existed in Collinwood, where I was born and raised. I studied all of the old Jewish independent newspapers going back to 1915 and worked up the statistics and pertinent events that occurred in the community over the years. I worked on that treatise for about a year. When I finished, I submitted it to the archivist at the museum, and it now reposes in the Jewish Archives section of the museum. That project finished, I pulled down my clarinet from the shelf and had it overhauled and started practicing every day. And on the back of that page, he had pictures of his best friends, Phil and Miriam Wexberg and Earl and Son. I found one more page, handwritten, which I think is the rough draft of the ending of this autobiography. He said it's a recap of his entire autobiography, which is probably 100 or 150 pages long. After receiving an honorable discharge from the Merchant Marine, I returned home. After working several different jobs, I was fortunate to be taken into the electrical union as an apprentice and worked as an electrician for 38 years while I was doing stand-up comedy and also playing in the clarinet in several dance bands. I kept saying, I'll never retire, but I reached that certain plateau when I realized that it was time to retire. So now my wife and I are living in an independent living facility where I still do my comedy performance. I also volunteer to work in the greenhouse. I miss the yard work that I used to do when I lived in our house. I still continue to write in my memoir and also some fiction stories, and I had 3 of my short stories published. I come from a great family. I have a wonderful wife and 2 terrific sons and daughters-in-law, wonderful grandchildren, and now great-grandchildren. What more could I wish for? It's been a great life so far. I hope to keep it going. There's so much that I hope to do yet. Pirkei Avos says to us, who is rich? A person is rich who is happy with what he has. And I feel like my father was among the richest.
They do fill in a lot of the blanks, I believe. David survived by his wife, thank God, Natalie, his children, Ralph and Fran, Larry and Kyra, their children, and grandchildren, and great-grandchildren also, of course. So this will continue now with the service of the burial, so afterwards for the Kaddish. We'll do the Kriya first, maybe. Nichtam LeDavid Shamreni Elki Kasisi Boch Mat Adonai Tovasi Ba'alecha B'Kdosh V'Sheba'or Hema V'Direk Echatzi Bo. Psalm of David, protect me, God, for I have sought refuge in you. You said to the Lord, you are my master, I have no claim to your benefit. For the sake of the Holy Ones who are interred in the earth and for the mighty, all my desires are fulfilled because of them. Yidua Shmosam Achar Moharu, Ba'ashik Nispir Midom, Ba'esa Shmosam Ostabosai. Their sorrows will multiply those who rush after other gods. I shall not pour their libations nor carry their names upon my lips. Adonai Menos Chelki V'Koisi Ato Talif Goroli, Chavorim nofli ban'imim, af noklas shofar olai. Lord is my allotted portion and my share. You guide my destiny. Portions that fall into me in pleasant places, even inheritance is beautiful to me. I'll bless the Almighty who has advised me. Also in the night, my own intellect instructs me. Shivisi Adonai l'nagdi samid kimini balamot l'chein samach liba ve'elgal kavodiach b'sel yishton l'betach. I placed the Almighty before me all the time, because He's at my right hand. I shall not falter. For the following reason does my heart rejoice and my soul is elated. My flesh too rests in confidence. Kilo sa'azav nashili sholo sitan chasitcha liros shachas todi'eni orach chayim sevas mafas at panecha nimot yimincha nesach. Because you will not abandon my soul to the grave, you will not allow your devout ones to witness destruction. You will make known to me the path of life, the fullness of joy in your presence, the delights that are in your right hand for an eternal period of time. The Kaddish? Look at the Kaddish.
Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabah Lamad tivrach yirutei v'yamlit malchutei v'chayachon v'yamachon v'chayei l'chol beit Yisrael v'agalaz v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabah mavrach le'alam olamei alamaya Yitvarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudisha b'richu la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata darmin ba'al ma'am imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba michmaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osa shalom b'imrumav Huya aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen.
People go back to your house afterwards?
No.
The Shiva will begin, because of the holiday, the Shiva will actually formally begin on Monday morning. Next Monday morning goes through until Friday afternoon. Around your house? Shiva will be at your house?
My house, yeah.
That's outside.
Outside, yeah.
Shiva will be in the backyard at the Rothenberg Funeral house. Or on Zoom. 24773 Letchworth Road. And Zoom is, how do they...
I'll send out
Larry will send out for
Can I ask you to form 2 aisles, please, facing one another? Allow the mourners to pass through you. Mr.
So,